Cottagecore decor is perfect for turning your house into a dream little fairy tale cottage. But what if you don't have a house? What if you live in an apartment in the city? Can you still get the cottagecore look? Well, of course. I have so many fun ideas to share with you today to get the cozy cottagecore look, even if you live in a modern city apartment. Cottagecore definitely loves its architectural details. So especially if you have a more modern apartment, something that doesn't have sort of crown molding or just trim in general, it definitely can be a little bit more challenging, but you just got to get a little bit more creative. You can definitely use your furniture and other decor to bring some of that vintage architectural charm in, even if you aren't really looking to change the space at all. So I've focused a lot of my ideas on things that won't put your deposit in jeopardy. You don't have to worry about painting or wallpapering, anything that you would have to worry about majorly undoing before you move. Let's talk about curtains, because the older I get and the more I've decorated and styled, I have come to realize that I think that curtains are the secret superpower to making any space feel cozier and just more at home. They really do kind of set the stage for the entire space. Now, I know curtains can definitely be expensive. They are definitely an investment. When we first bought our house, we didn't have much of a budget for decor, and so I definitely skimped on things, and curtains were one of the big things I skimped on. It always just felt like this frivolous thing. Who needs to spend all of this money on curtains? That's so silly. Like, let's focus on all of the other decor. Looking back now, curtains are the number one thing that I would invest in a space that I'm like new to, moving into. I definitely would put my money in curtains. Especially if you're trying to get that cottagecore look, I really think there's few things that kind of bring in that coziness quite like curtains in a space. They really can just soften a room and make it feel so much cozier, so much quicker than almost any other element. Now, I have talked about curtains a little bit in one of my previous cottagecore decorating videos, so I won't go too in depth, but let's just go over some of my favorite styles for curtains, especially if you're trying to get the cottagecore look. My go-tos are anything lacy or ruffled or scalloped on the edges. Of course, patterns are really fun, like a gingham pattern, perhaps. But you can also just go with a nice classic linen blend. It really is just perfect for almost any decor style, honestly. So even if you think you might change styles in the future, going with like a nice warm linen blend will really be sort of the perfect thing that is totally worth putting your money to and investing in, and you don't really have to worry about it like not working with your future decor. Now, I also have another recommendation when it comes to curtains, but not for windows. I absolutely love the look of curtains between doorways. I know in some of my friends' apartments over the years, they've ended up with some like weird little doorways. Sometimes they just feel a little bit funky, and curtains are just the perfect way to transform it from something that's like maybe feels a little bit awkward to something that's really lovely, like really separates the space and just creates a vibe. And all you have to do is sort of grab a tension rod and find some really fun curtains. Especially, I feel like lace is sort of my favorite. It's just so beautiful. You can also do that in front of like an open closet, adding that extra bit of texture in between spaces and sort of using it to separate spaces just a little bit, like really ups the cottagecore vibe. So my next idea is something that I'm personally just like obsessed with right now, and it kind of fits in with the curtains textiles, and that is a canopy bed. How many of us dreamed of that princess canopy bed when we were little? Like, I know I certainly did, and I've never had one. So I feel like I don't care how old I am now. I want that princess canopy bed in my life. Now, of course, I love a traditional like 4-poster antique canopy bed, something made out of wood. Really, really lovely, especially if you could maybe thrift it. Of course, that would be like ideal. Sometimes you can also find them on like Facebook Marketplace. Find a beautiful old wooden one that has maybe some trim details. That would be a really great way to kind of bring in some of that architectural details that might be missing in a more modern apartment, bring in actual furniture pieces that have sort of like carved wood. Now, I know canopy beds are not totally practical in every single situation, especially if you have lower ceilings. They just might not be an option. But another style of canopy bed that might work in a wider variety of spaces would be a crown style. Now you've probably seen these before. These are the style that sort of hang at the back of the bed, usually just like pinned up on the wall, or you can get a little piece that is perfectly made for crown style canopy beds. This is a style that you can fairly easily make your own, and you can even thrift some maybe old bed sheets, nice big like king bed sheets, give yourself plenty of extra fabric, and just sort of pull them up at the top of your ceiling, depending on how high your ceilings are, at the back of your bed, and it just kind of creates like just a really lovely little back canopy. So I think that that's a really great idea if you don't want to go the crazy 4-poster big canopy bed. Also, if you already have a bed frame, like a crown canopy might be just a better option. So that way you're not buying a whole new bed frame or anything. Kind of really leaning into utilizing textiles. Another great way to do that is with your shower curtain. So not all apartments need shower curtains, obviously. So if they don't, then they don't. Such a great space to add some extra coziness, especially if you have a more modern apartment. A lot of their bathrooms feel very white and very sterile. So adding some coziness with a really nice shower curtain really can change the entire feeling of a space. I always recommend bumping up your shower curtain if you can, just like taking it all the way to the ceiling. If you have a tension rod, just like pushing it all the way up. Doing that can really make your space feel a little bit more grand. It can also make it feel a lot bigger. And when it comes to the actual shower curtain, I definitely recommend going with an actual curtain instead of opting for like a traditional, you go to Target and just pick out a shower curtain that's in the shower curtain aisle. Definitely take a look at the actual curtains, because I think you have so much more variety, and you can get things like a really fun print, or you can once again do lace. Obviously, you'll still have your waterproof curtain on the inside of the shower, but the one that's on the outside, I think using that as an opportunity to add either some texture or color or print adds so much to a space. I also really love the look of actually sort of framing a shower using curtains like you would with a traditional window, is like having them both come down, and it just creates like this really dramatic moment. Especially if you go with something like lacy or ruffly, I feel like that's just sort of like the ultimate cottagecore moment in a bathroom. Now, I am always a big fan of collections, so I love to see maybe a collection of art all in sort of like a similar style. Definitely don't want to be too matchy-matchy. Or doing a plate wall is very cottagecore. Thrifting a bunch of vintage plates and just creating a whole plate wall is so cute. And then of course, I love copper molds. I've been collecting them for a while now. But whatever you love, figure out something that you really love that you would love to just like collect and use your walls to show it off. Another great way to add some interest and also sort of like a vintage charm is by really going all in on sort of like fun jars and storage options. I especially love sort of like apothecary style jars for storage in like your bathroom or in your kitchen. There are really so many fun, beautiful things that I often see at the thrift store or antique store that can really bring in some of that beautiful, unique touches to your space. I often see glass and crystal at thrift stores. I feel like at least the thrift stores by me always have a ton of it. Use them for storage everywhere, and it just adds little pops of interest throughout your space and can often be really, really affordable ways to do that. Okay, here's another idea that I feel like I don't see people talk about all that much, but I just really love, and that is those screen room dividers. I feel like you used to see them a lot. Like if you watch vintage movies, you'll see those in apartments. I don't know if she actually had one, but for some reason in my mind in Breakfast at Tiffany's, she did. I'm probably totally wrong, but I just feel like you used to see them like a lot more, and they're just so cute, especially if you are in an apartment. You can oftentimes like have sort of like strange spaces. I've seen some like odd setups of apartments, and it's fun to use those to kind of create a little bit of division. Cottagecore feels best when it's sort of like cozy, and creating sort of smaller pockets by using room dividers is a really great way to do that. You could get a wood one and maybe paint it with some like folk art or something like that. And I also really love the fabric ones. Like we talked about, textiles are so great for adding some coziness. So if you do have the space to add one in, I would totally recommend it. I think they're just so adorable. Now, if you don't mind punching just like 1 or 2 little holes into your walls, I definitely think that in the kitchen, adding a hanging rail for teacups, just to show off sort of like a vintage teacup collection, I think would be such a great way to add that cottagecore feeling, especially into like a very modern kitchen in an apartment. Vintage teacups are such a fun thing to collect anyway, so I think having a little hanging rail where you can sort of show them off would be such a great option. Now, I have also seen people hang those types of rails even with just command strips, but you definitely want to make sure you have super strong ones if you're going to do that, because you don't want all of your teacups falling down in the middle of the night and breaking and just breaking your heart. Another idea for the kitchen is if you have some counter space and can add sort of a cozy little corner, especially with like a little mini kitchen lamp. Love a kitchen lamp moment. I definitely think that that's such a great way to add a cozy element to an otherwise very modern and stark kitchen. And also with cutting boards, I really think that especially like vintage wooden cutting boards are just so beautiful just as decor, even if you don't necessarily want to use them. I know a lot of people don't want to go through the deep cleaning in order to utilize like a pre-loved cutting board, which is totally fine. Even if you just use them as decor, they are so beautiful. Having sort of a little wooden cutting board collection can definitely break up especially like an all-white kitchen. So another great way to add some of those architectural feeling details without really changing your space is with really interesting mirrors. I love a good mirror moment. I have found some amazing mirrors at the thrift stores over the years. It's definitely like a waiting game, as always with thrifting, but you can find some really beautiful mirrors that have beautiful trim. And I just feel like if you can't actually like add trim, like if your space doesn't have trim or it has very boring trim, having a mirror that has that like really decorative, beautiful trim can really pull in that vibe without having to actually change the space itself. Now you can also get a mirror and add sort of elements like that onto it. I know I've seen quite a few people over the years sort of do knockoffs of the Anthropologie Primrose mirror. And I mean, that's a beautiful mirror if you can afford it. But if not, and you want to do sort of one of those DIYs, I think that's a great way to add some of those architectural sort of elements and make a space feel a little bit more elevated without having to actually change the space. Now, I know a lot of apartments are limited on space, but if you do have an extra little corner, I absolutely love the look of sort of a cafe table moment. Maybe just a little baby table with two little chairs, and it just kind of ups the whimsy of the space, because do we need a little cafe table moment? No, probably not. But I definitely just love the look of a little cafe moment, especially in a cozy little apartment. You know I love plants, always more plants. You can never have quite enough plants. I definitely feel like, especially if you're in like a stark white apartment, adding in plants really just kind of changes the texture. They add a lot of texture to walls, especially if you can hang them or just have them sort of trailing down. Especially vining plants are just so perfect for getting the cottagecore look. If you are a new plant parent too, I did recently do a little video talking about sort of my favorite like cottagecore style plants. So I will link that below too if you want to check that out, because you're looking for some inspiration on what to get. You absolutely do not need to own your own house in order to create a cozy cottagecore atmosphere. I truly believe you can do so much with just decor. If you live in an apartment and you have some tricks that you found over the years, definitely leave it below. I'd love to know what has worked for you to kind of like cozy up a modern apartment. I hope you are having a lovely day, and I will see you next time.